In this episode of Doc's Boost, we're going to talk all about fuel rail pressure sensors. What does it do? And what happens when it's failing or has completely failed? So what does it do? Well, just as the name suggests, it monitors the fuel pressure moving through the rails that deliver fuel to the injectors. The more you step on the accelerator, it tells the ECU to provide more fuel. At wide open throttle, the sensor demands more now. Without this sensor, or with a failing sensor, many things can go wrong because the ECU is not getting the right signals from the fuel system, and things just start to happen that's going to really frustrate you. And we're going to talk about a few of those things. One of the first things that happens is that the check engine light will start flashing. It'll illuminate and tell you, hey, there's something wrong. Stop and check me out. So you know how important that is already. So once this happens, you got to stop and pull those DTC codes out of there. And the ones you're really going to pay particular attention to as far as the fuel sensor is the P0190-193. So anything 190, 191, 192, 193 is going to be all about or some issue with how that fuel rail sensor is functioning. One or any combination of those codes means that your rail sensor is not working within the parameters that the ECU expects from it. Other symptoms include difficulty in starting the engine. The engine will crank just normally, but and it might even start, but then it stalls. And you might have to repeat that process a couple of times to get going. And that can get pretty frustrating because you used to be able to just turn that key and it starts right up. And you also may be experiencing reduced performance, a drop in power. You may need more time to gain speed, to get on the freeway, or to pass a vehicle, or just to get out of your driveway, or to get out of your own way, right? So that's going to happen. And without the correct signals, the ECU can't deliver the right amount of fuel for the right job. You may be filling up at the pump a little more because if you're not getting the right amount of fuel, you could be running rich. The engine's not going to perform well. It can't burn all the fuel in there, and you're going to just waste gas, and you got to put more in, and it just a vicious cycle happens. So you're spending way more money than you should on fuel. And there's also the possibility of misfiring and rough running, and this brings us to the frustrating stall. Man, stalling when stopping at traffic signals, stop signs, I mean, it just gets ridiculous. And you know how frustrating it is when your car just stalls when you come to a stop and everybody's staring at you. You know, whether they are or not, you think they are, you know. Worst case, your car may go into limp mode. Replacing the sensor is fairly straightforward. Even though the symptoms are fairly universal, and the solenoid design and placement is not the same throughout the industry, so you can find it looking like this, or you might even find it looking like this, and you can see these two sensors look completely different, but they do the exact same job. Plus, the location on the rail varies from one model to the next. Here's a couple examples of the many that are out there. The sensor and its locations, as far as Mustangs are concerned, are pretty standard and straightforward. The one on my 2007 GT looks exactly like the one on my 2012 Shelby, and both of them are in the exact same place, right in the middle of the rail on the passenger side of the engine. And there's this one right there, mounted right on the rail. Pretty easy access. And here's this one on the 07, mounted on the rail, but I was wrong. It's on the driver's side, and not in the center, but towards the end. But it looks exactly like the same sensor as the 2012 sensor. This type of sensor is electronically controlled, but actuated by vacuum and pressure. At idle speed and normal driving conditions, you're going to get a little bit of vacuum applied to it. But at wide open throttle, that connection's going to change from vacuum to pressure and tell the sensor, I want more fuel. Give it to me now. They're very easy to get to, very easy to work with. And with that said, let's go ahead and replace the sensor on the Shelby. All right, one of the first things we got to do to replace this sensor, this fuel rail sensor, is get some of the hoses out of the way. So we're going to disconnect some hoses. And barbed connections are always a little bit of a struggle, but they pay off in the long run because they don't just fall off, right? So there's that. And we'll get that one off and get that out of the way. And I think that's all we got to do. Now we got to get the connector out of the way. And there you go. And get some Allen sockets and just unscrew it. And that would be a 5, I believe. Actually that's a 4. And it should slide up like that, as you can see. And I put a small amount of lubricant on the O-ring, and we will pop that in place. Whoops, let's turn it to the right direction here. That would be a disaster. And pop it in and start the screws. And we're going to tighten them evenly without over tightening and cracking anything. All right, that should do it. We are going to put the connector back on. Listen for it to click. Click, you heard that? We are then going to put this hose back on. And this one back on. And that's it. We're done. You've got a new fuel rail sensor in place. And now no more codes, no more problems, no more issues whatsoever. Drivability is back the way it should be. And with all of that done, let's go check out that video right down there of doing a burnout, because what the heck, now that we got it running smooth and efficiently again, let's go smoke 'em. And I'll see you in that video in just a moment, and thanks for watching.